Hi students, welcome all. In this video, I am planning to discuss some differences between agreement and contract, void agreement and voidable contract, void agreement and void contract and voidable contract, void contract and illegal agreement. In our previous video, we discussed the meaning of agreement, contract, void contract, voidable contract, etc. Now, today we can discuss the major differences between all of these. So, as all you know, a contract is a legally accepted agreement between two parties. All contracts are agreement, but all agreements are not a contract. Agreements means meeting of minds at a certain point. Agreement may be on business purpose, commercial purpose or domestic purpose. So, firstly, we can discuss the main difference between agreement and contract. When a proposal is accepted by the person to whom it is made with adequate consideration, it is an agreement. When this agreement is enforceable by law, it becomes a contract. So, this is the first difference. Now, moving on to the next difference. Offer and acceptance are the elements included in an agreement, whereas agreement and enforceability are the elements in a contract, which means agreement is equal to offer plus acceptance, contract is equal to agreement plus enforceability. Now, the next difference is agreement is defined under section 2 subsection E of the Indian Contract Act. On the other hand, section 2 subsection H of the Indian Contract Act define a contract. A written format is not necessary in the case of an agreement. Usually, a written and registered format is followed in a contract. Agreement does not create legal obligation, whereas contract create legal obligation. All contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not a contract. Scope of the agreement is wide. That means when compared to agreement, scope of the contract is narrow. So, the wider term is agreement and the narrow term is contract. So, these are all about the main difference between agreement and contract. Now, moving on to the next topic, that is difference between void agreement and voidable contract. Void agreement is void from the very beginning of the agreement. But a voidable contract is valid from one party but not for another. Enforceability by law is the missing element in void agreement, whereas free consent of the party is missing in voidable contract. Void agreement cannot be enforceable by any party, whereas voidable contract continue to be enforceable as long as both the parties give their consent. So, this is the difference between void agreement and voidable contract. Now, the next topic is difference between void agreement and void contract. Void agreement is void from beginning to end, whereas void contract is void when one party fails to perform the obligation. There is no elements of contracts in a void agreement, but elements of contracts are available in void contract. Void agreement cannot be enforceable in a court of law, but void contracts are enforceable. There is no third party involvement in a void contract, whereas third party can be involved in a void contract. There is no rights and obligation in the case of void agreement. Right and obligations are available in a void contract. No damages and compensation are available in void contract, while damages and compensations are prevail in a void contract. So, this is the main difference between void agreement and void contract. Now, moving to the next topic, that is void contract versus voidable contract. The main difference between void contract and voidable contract are: void contract is a type of contract which cannot be enforceable in any court of law. Voidable contract means an agreement enforceable by law by one or more parties. Void contract is valid when it is created, but later it becomes unenforceable or void due to some negative or bad circumstances. Voidable contract is remain voidable until the contract is cancelled. There is no legal remedies available in the case of void contract, whereas the aggressive party has the right to get remedy to cancel the contract. In void contract, the party cannot demand the performance of the contract. If the aggressive party does not cancel the contract within a reasonable time, performance of contract is needed. Change in law or circumstances is the reason for changing a valid contract into void contract. Absence of free consent is the reason for changing a contract into voidable. Now, next topic is void contract versus illegal agreement. The main difference between void contract and illegal agreement are: void agreement is not prohibited by law, whereas illegal agreement is prohibited by law. Collateral transactions are enforceable in the case of void agreement, whereas it is not enforceable in illegal agreement. Void agreement has no punishment, but punishment is there in the case of illegal agreement. Void agreement may or may not be void ab initio. Illegal agreement always void ab initio. That means from the beginning itself illegal agreement is void. So these are the main difference between void and illegal agreement. Now we can discuss some questions which is related in this area. They are: explain the difference between agreement and contract, explain the difference between void agreement and voidable contract, explain the difference between void agreement and void contract, explain about the difference between void contract and voidable contract, explain the difference between void contract and illegal agreement. So students, try to solve this question. This is your assignment. Okay, now we can wind up today's section. See you in the next class. Thank you.